Welcome to the Write the Damn Book Already podcast. My name is Elizabeth Lyons. I'm a 6-time author, and I help people write and publish powerful, thought-provoking nonfiction and memoir without any more overthinking, second-guessing, or overwhelm than absolutely necessary. Because let's face it, some overthinking, second-guessing, and overwhelm is going to come with the territory if you're anything like me. I believe that story and shared perspective is one of the most potent ways we connect with one another, and that your story, perspective, and insights are destined to become someone else's favorite resource. For more book writing, publishing, and how the heck do I move through this glitch tips and solutions, and plenty of free and low-cost resources, visit publishaprofitablebook.com. And for recommendations of fabulous books you've possibly never heard of, book writing inspiration, and the occasional meme so relatable you'll wonder if it was created with you in mind, follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth Lyons Author. Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 46 of Write the Damn Book Already. Sometimes you meet people and you just think, where have you been all my life? A few weeks ago, I received an email from a delightful girl named Allison, who is reportedly a walking thesaurus, which means I need her in my life as well. And she said, Elizabeth, I don't know if it would be a great fit because the two of you do basically the same thing, but I think that you and Lauren Eckhardt, who is the founder of Burning Soul Press, and Allison works at Burning Soul Press, would just get along so well. And you have so many similar thoughts about the publishing space and the writing space. And if you're not too turned off by the idea of having a competitor on your podcast, I think that you guys would have a great conversation. And I was so excited because I really don't even believe in competition. And over the years, I've certainly hesitated to have coaches, book coaches on the podcast who have a completely different view than I do. Not because I'm not interested in engaging in a respectful dialogue about a different way to do this, because I'm absolutely not. But I'm also not, as you know, about proving that my way is the right way. So sometimes it feels like, well, what's the point of the conversation if we do things terribly differently beyond just saying, well, no, I don't do it that way, I do it this way. And frankly, not the more I looked, it did not take me long to dive into Lauren's website, burningsoulcollective.com, which I will link in the show notes. I'm going to link everything there is to link about Lauren in the show notes to determine that, in fact, I think we might have been separated at birth. And I could not wait to get her on the show to talk to her about her writing experience, because she has written a number of books, primarily in the fiction realm, but also coaches primarily in the nonfiction realm, runs a hybrid publishing house, has extremely similar views to me on publishing and writing and roadblocks and all those things. But I'm always so curious to just learn more from other coaches in the space, other people in the space, authors, publishers, editors, coaches, on what they're learning, what they're doing differently, and how they are working behind the scenes to help create more visibility and more, and I'm putting air quotes around this, but success for indie authors. Because if we can do that, it means that more stories get told, which selfishly means that I get to read more stories, I get to learn more about other people, about myself, about the world at large. And I really do believe that that helps us all contribute so much to the collective. This conversation with Lauren was amazing. I know you're going to appreciate it, and I'm not even going to intro it with anything more than that. Again, all of the show notes are in the episode description below. Please check her out and follow her because she has some amazing things to say and share, wisdom to share, insights to divulge, and encouragement to help you move forward. Very quickly, before I dive into the interview, if you have not yet signed up for the Social Media for Authors and Writers workshop that is happening on July 20th with Jen Hansen-DePaula from Mixtus Media, I highly encourage you to grab your spot. I will be sending out a replay to everyone who cannot attend live, so not being able to join at the day and time that the live workshop is being presented is not at all a problem. Jen is masterful at breaking down the art of social media for authors in a way that feels fun, that does not feel overwhelming, and that allows you to reach and connect with amazing, amazing people just like Lauren. It's how I met Lauren. It's how I met Jen Hansen-DePaula. So for as bad a rap as social media sometimes gets, even from me, I'm so grateful for it as an author, and learning new tips and strategies for making it work for you in a way that feels good to you is really pretty priceless. The link to sign up is in the show notes, and it is also in my Instagram link in bio. Get yourself signed up. All right, let's hop into this interview. I was so excited when Allison messaged me because, she was so sweet. She said, these aren't her words, I'm paraphrasing, but something along the lines of, I don't know if you'd want to talk to Lauren because you guys do like exactly the same thing. So maybe it's a conflict, but I think you'd really like each other. And I was like, you just made my day. Oh. Because I'm not a competition girl. Like I don't think of it that way at all. And I could talk about the only thing I like to talk about more than Scandival and the latest season of The Bear is book.
Yes. The Bear is on my list. Like it has been on my list. So I need to watch it because I feel like it keeps like coming into my sphere. So I just need to watch it.
Have you even watched season 1?
You know what? I think I saw the first episode. And then that was it for whatever reason. But I don't even think it was like fully my attention, So I need to like go back and really. Oh, see, that reaction makes me want to watch it even more.
I'm embarrassed and yet willing to admit that I watched all of season 2, I think in one day.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I was reading something and it said, some people complain that they just can't get anything done, but the average person watches an average of 5 hours of TV today. And I'm like, well, I'm an overachiever because I think I watched
8. Okay, but it's not every day for you.
No, but I just couldn't stop.
So what makes it so good for you? Like, what do you really like?
That's a great question. And the one I'm least prepared to answer at most of the time. I think so. One thing that I love is all of the cast. It's so perfectly cast. And I don't know any of the cast members. Yeah. The only thing I can really equate it to in terms of great casting is Succession. I don't know if you've seen Succession. It's on, it's now Max. It was HBO Max, but let's just change the name of everything in 1 year so that I'm completely confused. But Succession, I knew a couple of the actors, who they were beforehand. With The Bear, I think they're all pretty new, not new, like they've probably been acting for 20 years because as we'll talk about, like overnight success, not a thing, but it's just so well done. And I think from a writing standpoint, like, I don't know if you do this, so I'm asking if you do this. When I watch things like that, I really do believe that in many ways it's work related because I kind of am studying, like, how do they get there? And with The Bear, there's a lot of backstory. And so backstory is you're primarily a fiction author, right? Okay. Which I love and was one of the reasons I was so excited to speak to you because, as a coach, do you coach all genres?
Primarily right now is nonfiction. That's really that feels more aligned with like my ultimate purpose, which we can get into after we discuss The Bear, of course. Yeah. But I still have a heart though for fiction, and I've thought about doing both, but I'm like, it's a lot to try to waver between that side of the spectrum, so
it is
trying to stay focused right now on that.
Yeah, it's two very different things because I too primarily coach nonfiction memoir, but I've been working on a novel for a long time and I'm now in it and committed. I mean, this will be the novel that took 20 years to write, but didn't really because it was in a drawer for 17 of those 20 years, so that'll be my really exciting story. This took 20 years and it's like, no, Liz, it didn't. But it is a very different, it's just very different.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it's the same.
Like,
well, tell me what's your ultimate goal? Since you brought that
goal. Sure. We have to get back to The Bear though.
We will. I'm writing it down.
Perfect. No, my ultimate goal, and I've been getting more and more clarity, especially over the past, few years, but definitely in the past year. And I really feel like my purpose here is to capture people's stories, help them ideally capture their own, because even I ghostwrite, and even with ghostwriting, yes, the whole goal is to try to capture their tone, their voice, but still nothing beats, I feel like, when the words are fully flowing straight from your mind, your heart, through your fingers, like I think there's something so special about that. So yeah, I really feel like my purpose here is to capture people's life stories, and more of, whether it's just for them or their family, or they decide to edit it and send it out to the world, but number one, like I keep having this obsession lately with this whole idea of like my mom's really big into genealogy and doing the family trees and all of that. And it's interesting because I've never really been into that. But I think the reason why is because if I had their actual stories of their life, I would be so much more into what's happening versus just like a trail, right, of these people's names. That doesn't mean much to me. And I just keep thinking, what if I knew from their personal experience, these ancestors' journeys, every decision that they made that essentially led to my existence here in this world? How much more and if we all knew that about our lives, how much more intentional would we be with our lives and really see it for what it is in the bigger picture?
Yeah.
You know?
I do know. And I think that's so interesting because people talk so much. Legacy is such a buzzword, but it's become such a buzzword that it means something different to everyone, and rightly so. I feel like people hear the word and don't often consider what it does mean to them.
Yeah. Yep.
So what do you want to leave behind? It's not just money.
Exactly.
Which is how it's often perceived.
Yes.
What you just said that I think is so interesting, but like my mom many, many years ago created this scrapbook for my sister, one for me. And she actually took the time to go back in the lineage. And she found, Lauren, like actual deeds to land from the 1800s and marriage certificates and letters that were written from men to their girlfriends or wives or whatever, and put this all in this scrapbook. And just like you said, it kind of made me think about it differently. I don't have their stories. I don't have their words of what they went through, but you can glean a little bit by looking at, like, they bought 17 acres for 16 cents. It's like,
but you're almost able to like craft more of a narrative though, when you see those pieces still,
right?
Not having anything at all to go off of. So I think that's right. That she took the time to do all of that.
It really was. And sometimes I look through it now. It's almost like a great book where every time I look through it, I pick up something new.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much in there that I don't think it's possible to really capture it all at one time.
Yeah.
So what got you into book coaching, and from the fiction side, right? Because you have multiple, you have a whole series.
Yeah.
Fiction wise, would you consider that genre? What do you consider the genre?
I consider
Fantasy?
Across the board genres with all the stories in my head. I just, that's one thing with like Colleen Hoover. People will either love her or hate her. And I understand that. I was fortunate to like really read her very first work that she self-published. That's when I first knew of her. I haven't really followed her through the rest.
That Slammed?
Yeah, Slammed. Yeah. Yes. And I mean, it was a great book that I got into. And then once I learned that she like self-published and did all of that, that was incredible. What I love and respect about her, though, is that she's very much like, do not put me in a box. I'm not an author that writes a specific genre. I'm across the board. And I've always called myself like a mood reader, because it is based off of my moods with what I gravitate to. And as I've been more and more clear about like these seasons that we fall into that really make a difference for our writing, I'm like, oh, it makes sense with me being a mood reader. It's the same way with a writer, like I'm a mood writer. And so I love that flexibility to write across all genres. So far I've done young adult dystopian, women's fiction, and, with What's in My Head, there are a lot of others. Like I've got a domestic thriller brewing and, some other aspects. Fantasy is actually on my list too. And I think it's so important to be able to honor that, but then it's balanced too, because I want to make sure that not only am I just writing in new genres, but I'm taking the time to fully read in those genres and know it inside and out before I publish, right? Because I think that's so important, or fully write a book. And like I said, I think that's what's so difficult with fiction is that there are so many sub genres. It's overwhelming.
It's so bad, not bad, but especially in the romance category. I mean, there are genres that I'm like, what is that? People who fall in love in swamps. That's a genre. I'm making that up, but
it should be
surprised, right? It might be a thing. I don't know.
As with someone listening to this right now, you have planted a seed of a future story of someone falling in love in a swamp.
Like I had a dream about that the other night, but I didn't think anyone could do it. And Liz just made me feel like this is really possible. This could be a thing. This is how it all starts, right? I completely agree with you. And I read an article. So I didn't know about Colleen Hoover until Colleen Hoover was Colleen Hoover. I actually found her through my 15-year-old daughter.
Oh, wow.
Who found her through TikTok.
He was on it. Yeah.
And then I read a couple and I thought, oh my God, I can't believe my 15-year-old daughter is reading some of this.
That was my second thought that I just had. Like I was going through a couple of books. Is that appropriate? I don't know.
Right. I don't know. Okay. Well, it's happened. So there we go. But I can't remember if it was in the Times or where it was, but it was an article with her where she said exactly what you had said. I refuse to be put in a box. If I want to write thriller, I've got Verity. If I want to write romance, I've got It Ends With Us. If I, whatever. And also that she switches between self-publishing, hybrid publishing, and publishing houses. She's not even loyal to one house. The other thing I love about her is that, and of course she can do this because she's where she is, but she doesn't even have to show up. Like she's a pretty quiet, reclusive person. She hasn't changed her life I don't think she lives in a trailer anymore, but she hasn't changed her life that much. She is who she is. And she didn't want to be front and center when, I can't remember what book it was. You might know, you probably do know, that came out where they wrapped the bus in Times Square with the cover.
No, I don't know about that.
It was, she releases like 24 books a year. So I did, but it was within the last year and she wasn't even there. Like all of Times Square was a Colleen Hoover situation and Colleen Hoover was not there and nobody was on her. I'm sure there were some people who were, I'm not listening to any of them, but I think she really opened the door for saying you can do it your way.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's something that really needs to be probably more of a focus of a case study. Like even as I'm listening to you, I'm like, I need to like really take a look at her even more than what I know, because I'm sure you experience this too. It's the number one hesitation for a lot of authors who come in and want to publish their book. It's the marketing aspect, putting yourself out there. You have to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting. And I always go back to like, it has to feel authentic to you, period. Yes. I don't post every day on social media. I don't have the best numbers either. And that's probably all attributed, but it doesn't feel good to me. And I'm okay with that because when it's something, especially like you're writing a story, a book that's truly coming from like your heart, your soul, your dreams, your fears, like whatever it might be, it feels so personal to you.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to put it out there, let alone then force yourself ultimately to market it in ways that don't feel good, like it's a struggle. So I think it's such a great example that she sets with just be you and trust that. And you can still have great luck with people following you and creating that. Right. She has a diehard fan base. I don't know if I would hit like Taylor Swift fans up with Colleen Hoover fans, like who would ultimately win?
I just read something. It was probably on Threads, since that's the new place to be. Speaking of overwhelm.
Not even on there for that reason.
Okay. Well, I don't know what to tell you right now on whether or not to get I hate the word should. So I'm like you. I with my own clients and just people I talk to in general, if someone says, I don't want to go on TikTok, I say, don't do it. Don't do it. If they say, I don't want to be on social media at all, I say, okay. And And there is something that comes with that. Like Carly Waters, who's probably my favorite literary agent, she's with PS Literary, posted the other day, and she's just one of the most authentic, kind people. And she said, if you don't want to be on social media, okay, but you're not, I'm paraphrasing again, you're not going to sell books. Mm-hmm. So I think there's, and I take that back a little bit. It's not that you're not going to sell any books. It's that if there is a sort of a cause and effect. I mean, You can also have 200,000 followers and not sell any books because you don't have I'm using air quotes, right followers, right? Yeah, absolutely. But it is so much about doing just what you're right. It's hard enough to put the book out there. And I think that's what a lot of people are not fully prepared for. Yeah. So do you have that? Sometimes I feel like a little bit, and I have to tell people like, I'm not a licensed therapist, just through Google. Right. I've had a lot of people say, and you probably have too, like, you're kind of my unofficial therapy, because when you're writing nonfiction and memoir, I mean, it is truly a gift. I believe it's a gift you give yourself, and it's a gift you give your readers. It can be very challenging.
I agree.
To do. Yeah. Have you experienced that as well?
All the time. Like I actually started off going down the therapist route. Like that's why I thought I wanted. Yeah, because I think it's always been in my heart to be able to help people in that way. But there's a very fine line between actually being certified and trained in therapy. But like you said, I mean, as a book coach, especially walking alongside these people as they are opening up stories and discovering new ones that they haven't thought about in years. I mean, you go into some very dark at times places, hard, difficult. There's a lot that you're experiencing. And, I say that every time someone writes a memoir, you have to be prepared for that. But I mean, clients who have gone through years and years and years of actual therapy, they feel like they're healed enough to share their story. They come through and write their story. It's a completely different transformation, healing process that actually happens, but it's hard throughout. It gets very difficult. You still have to face things that you thought you healed from. Mm-hmm. So I think it is. I always tell people that one of the best things that you can do is have an actual therapist when you go to write your memoir.
Yes.
And not to cross that line, right?
Right.
Like we are here to help you get the story out, but we're not here to actually help you heal through that story or, guide you in that way.
Correct.
But I wish I could do it all because
I know. Oh. And it ends up being, sometimes I almost feel, there's this saying, like, when you're doing the right job, again, air quotes, it doesn't feel like a job. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, I mean, let's be clear, everything feels like a job sometimes. I mean, when I have to go do the accounting, I'm like, this is very much a job, someone please. But sometimes it almost feels like such a gift that, because I learn things. Do you find that when you're coaching people through things, there's almost like a synchronicity sometimes. It's usually not the actual event that is a common experience for the two of us, but it will be a feeling.
It's the emotions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
1000%. And I think that is what's so profound about being able to write and share our stories is that connection then that gets created. Yes. And I have a group program where it's a smaller group. It's really more of people writing their books to create a movement or share their stories to create a movement. So it's more than just sharing my story. Like I truly want to make a difference, through this message and through everything associated. And what's really powerful is that, the people coming in with all different backgrounds, all different stories, but then you're sharing pieces and they're going, I haven't gone through that, but I can relate so deeply. And I think it's so beautiful to have those moments where you can share pieces of your story early with other people before it's out, because I always say, like, is it worth it to go through this if you know it's going to help one person?
One person.
Right.
When Allison messaged me, like, I just knew it. Yes. I ask people directly. In fact, not so much anymore, but back earlier on when I was and I want to talk to you about this, but I want to phrase it correctly because I don't want it to come out like I'm dismissing anything. But back in the early, so I've been book coaching now for about 5 years, full time, 4 to 5. And in the very earlier stages, I was working predominantly with entrepreneurs, and I still work with entrepreneurs or people who are entrepreneurs. But back then, it was more about this, like a book is the new business card, right? Yeah. And it was that whole mentality that I don't play in that
field anymore. Okay. So again, I'm trying to really choose the words well here. But and no disrespect to anyone who does. Okay. It's just it's not my lane.
Exactly.
So I used to ask those individuals, because one of the key things that they would ask me before we would work together is like, how many books can I expect to sell? How quickly can I expect to make my investment back? How much money can I expect to make? All those sorts of things. And so I would turn it around. And my question was, if you knew that your book was only going to be read by one person, but that it would genuinely impact that person's life in a positive way, would you still do it? And if the answer was no, I just knew they weren't my client, right? Because I don't know how else to say, like, this is a long game.
Yes.
This book writing thing, this is a long game. And so it put so much pressure on me as a coach. And now I'm out of that, thank God. But the pressure that's on so many people who are hearing through the echo chamber of social media, oh my God, the book is the thing. Yeah. If you have a book, you can get this and you can get this and you can get this in your life. And then what happens is they do it and that doesn't happen right away. And all of a sudden and I see it happen too, Lauren. Are you self-published?
Yeah. Yep. And then we also have, and then Burning Soul Press is a hybrid publisher for others too. So
literally, yeah. Because I have Finn Phyllis and you have Burning Soul. Burning Soul, is that?
Burning Soul Press. Yeah.
Burning Soul, right.
For the publishing imprint. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure that you do too. And I'd love to chat with you, like hear more about your thoughts on this. I have a lot of friends who are traditionally published and they do well and they love it. And I have friends who are traditionally published and they're like, I'd still not go any other way because this was an ego move for me. I wanted the traditional name and I love them dearly and I respect that. And I've never said I won't try that route. I might try that route for the novel. I might not. But they're kind of also like, this isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. And then I have people who self-publish and think, same, this is harder than I thought. All my friends and family have bought a book. Now what?
Yep.
So what's your perspective on all of that? How do you guide people through that maze?
I just adore everything you're saying because I'm just like, yes. And it's funny. I was just talking about this yesterday with one of my employees because I was talking to a client who's become a good friend, but she was one of the first books that we published and she's looking at writing another one. And she's just like, honestly, I don't know what path I'm going to go down, like there's so many. And she's like, I know there's pros and cons to everything. And I'm like, honestly, like, no matter what, you have an image of what it's going to be, and not just her, but a lot of people, what it's going to be an author. And many, many people don't know the background of what that person has gone through. They just see what they think they see and perceive. You are going to ultimately, if you are attached to that image of whatever you think someone else has done, you are ultimately going to be disappointed no matter what path you end up choosing. Yeah. Because there's a lot of work that goes into every single one. There's a lot of sacrifices that go into every single one. And so like the first thing that I do working with clients is that, I always break down like, what are your values? Like, and let's prioritize them because you aren't going to get everything that you want in one publisher or one publishing path. It's not going to pan out that way. So you really have to know what is the most important aspect to me in publishing this book. And then, going that route. I think what's so great, I'm becoming more and more just an advocate of self-publishing or hybrid publishing, however you want to do it, because I'm such a big advocate for maintaining your royalties for every book that is sold, maintaining your control, maintaining your vision. And I think the beauty of hybrid publishing is that then you have the experts still coming in who can provide that market expertise, the market research that maybe you don't want to do or have time to do. Yes. And so to me, it's that perfect blend. Like, I feel like if I was starting off as an author and I knew everything that I knew today, I would choose the hybrid publishing route above all else for that reason. It's this perfect little blend. But even with that, of course, you have your hangups, and the pros and cons of it all. Not being in bookstores right away without a lot of work or thinking about the marketing aspects. But you hear anymore with like traditional publishing, you still have to market.
It's not true that traditional publishing just automatically gets you in the bookstores.
Exactly.
And even if it does, it doesn't keep you in the bookstores,
Yep.
right? They have that 90-day window. And if you are not selling by day 89, you are returned and you are not reordered. So there can oftentimes be that big honeymoon period where authors are seeing their books in the local Barnes and Noble and in the airport and whatever. But fast forward 3 months, and we on the other side of the highlight reel have forgotten that.
Yes.
And we don't realize that now those same authors are sitting at home going, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So to your point, there's no, I think of hybrid publishing. I don't know if you've seen, you probably have. There are a lot of different self-publishing Facebook groups. And one of the things that I see most, I actually have muted a lot of them from my feed because I get very upset.
Yeah.
Right. And I try not to, because I know it's the people who post what I'm about to say have the best of intentions. They just aren't, in my opinion, terribly well informed. There's this constant thing. Don't ever pay anyone to, right? For everyone who's listening, Lauren, I need to note, is nodding aggressively. Don't ever pay someone to publish your book. Now, I don't know how you feel about this, but please tell me, there's a difference between vanity and hybrid for me. So vanity, they'll take anything that comes across their desk. They're going to charge you a ridiculous fee, and then they're going to keep 20% on the back end. It's going to be impossible for you to order author copies. You don't have a partnership. They don't give a crap. They just want your money. End of story. So in that regard, absolutely do not ever pay a vanity publisher. But a hybrid publisher who can be your partner, I see that as professional publishing. That's how I see it. I do that mostly for my clients who say, I don't need or want to wait on an agent or a traditional house to acquire the book, but I don't have the time or desire to go through all these steps myself. Liz, you know what you're doing, take it and go. And I don't keep any royalties on the back end. Like I cut the cord the minute the book is published. So it's all uploaded under their account. Do you do that similarly? Okay.
Exactly the same.
I had and zero judgment if you did, because there are plenty of good, solid, reputable hybrid houses who charge a lesser amount upfront because they are taking a risk, and then they will take a percentage off the back end. I just prefer to let the child grow up on their own. I'm not helicopter parenting. It's too much with all the other things I have going on.
Yeah.
But I feel as though it gets such a bad rap because we don't ever tell people, if you're going to start a business, don't ever get investors. It's just a choice. I mean, why do we naysay investing in greenlighting yourself when it comes to a book? Why? What's your thought on that?
I think probably exact same thoughts as what you have with it, because every time I see that, because you see it almost daily in these groups. So I've done the same thing because I just have to bite my tongue instead of, trying to educate them properly. But I think a lot of people, because you hear something, you latch onto it, and then you don't really do the research yourself, or you haven't had the same experiences. And I think it's really good, like you said, that people are bringing that awareness to vanity publishers, but it is a totally separate breed than hybrid publishers. And people need to be aware of that. There are traditional publishing imprints, like the big 5 names, that have hybrid publishing imprints as well. There's a reason for that, because it's usually too for like the smaller genre books that they're not willing to invest all their big amounts of money into. So it's author funded instead of business funded. And people don't recognize that. And the other thing that I always want to say when I hear people say you should never pay to publish your book, you are paying when your book is published, no matter what it looks like. Hybrid publishing, like you said, with most formats, I mean, our businesses, and, I think the majority, it's the author funded. You pay up front for all of the services to be done. So yes, you're paying in the front end for your book, but you're paying for it to be edited, the cover design, like ISBNs, like everything. But if you go the traditional publishing route, you are still paying for your book to be published, because you're giving up 80 to 90% of your royalties every time a book is sold. So you're still paying. So that whole never pay for your book to be published, I'm like, you're paying. no matter what. Yes.
Well, and the number of friends I have who have actually taken a sizable portion of their advance, which a lot of people don't realize, it's an advance against earnings. It's not a signing bonus.
Yep, exactly.
It's paid out over time, and 15% goes to your agent and all of that. They have taken a sizable amount and hired writing coaches, editors on the side. Because right now in publishing, and this isn't true across the board, but these poor editors are completely overwhelmed. And so many times the authors feel like, hey, can I take this off your plate and put it on someone else? Like, I'll pay for it. Certainly marketing. Most of the traditionally published authors I know of end up hiring an outside PR group or marketing group or something, right? Yeah. So I completely agree with you. There is a hybrid publisher, and I won't say who it is, but you may have heard of this model where it's free up front, but if you don't sell 2,000 or 3,000 copies within the first 6 months through the publisher's website, not on Amazon, not at Barnes and Noble, you have to cover that cost. Well, people are getting a bill for between $15,000 and $20,000 that they aren't expecting because it's in the very fine print, and they fall prey to, oh my God, they want me, and it's free.
Oh, I did not know that. That's terrifying.
It's a quite well-known outfit that I'm speaking of.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, but it's done. They're not the only ones doing it.
Yeah,
I was shocked to find out that they were, because given the demographic or the genre of book they publish, I'm surprised. But maybe there are people who, in their mind, they're thinking, I know I'm going to be out $20K no matter what. So right. You don't know what's going through people's minds when they make their decisions.
I think the other part too, I think it's easy for a lot of people to go into this and they've seen the tags on books like sold 1 million copies. And, you think about the population of the world and you're like, surely I can sell, 20,000 copies easily, it should be easy to do. And I will tell you, that is just a concept that haunts me day in and day out. I put so much energy into thinking like there has to be some easy formula that can be applied for indie authors specifically to be able to sell large quantities without losing themselves in platforms that they don't want to be a part of, or, having to spend tons on marketing dollars. I mean, I just keep thinking
the exact same. I've said the same thing, and I've toiled and tormented myself. And I've come to the current understanding, realization, and acceptance that it is sheer luck.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear about, his name is Lloyd. It was a TikTok thing.
Was it the older gentleman?
Yes. Yes. Oh, come on. I mean, nothing makes my heart explode like that. I mean, that was incredible, but it was so random.
Yep.
So, I mean, could it be random? Of course it could. Somebody wins the lottery every once in a while. And I find that when people are writing their books, it actually slows them down, not realizing that every other writer on the planet, including probably Colleen Hoover, sits sometimes at their desk like, what am I doing?
Yeah. Yep. 1,000%.
The words are not coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's your guidance for that? How do you help people through that sort of imposter syndrome / I don't know if I'm who am I to think I can do this?
I am so glad you're not using the term like writer's block, because I'm very anti-concept of writer's block.
Okay. Seriously. Did you know this about me? Like I've said formally, I do not believe in writer's block.
I never knew that about you.
I'm believing it. People have gotten mad.
Yes. Yep.
And then I'm like, okay, someone's getting mad. That means I'm going somewhere.
Exactly.
This is good.
Yeah. I'm always
like, mad. They're like, what do you mean? Tell me what you mean by that before I tell you what I mean by it.
I think it's just an excuse that we find a crutch on above all else, really, usually it's laced. If you actually cut it back and figure out what's going on, you're either not prioritizing it or you have certain fears that are underneath, there's always an undercurrent behind it all. Yep. And then you pick something that already has a label and you're like, oh, that must be what it is, because I can't overcome that. And the other thing I don't like is that it gives people an excuse to just stop. And I'm one of those people that I'm like, even if it feels painful, write for 10 minutes, like just write for 10 minutes, because that is better on a disciplined consistency. That's going to give you more of that output. On top of that, move your body, go for a walk, get some exercise, go write in a brand new environment that you haven't been to. Like, have you actually tried to do something different to help you write instead of just saying, oh, I'm in writer's block.
I got writer's block.
Yeah.
Or I'm waiting to be inspired, right? So I have a Facebook group and I love this group. Yeah. And when people join, I ask a few questions, one of which is, why are you joining this group? Like, what are you looking for that you're not finding elsewhere? How can we best support you? The number one and number two answers are, I'm looking, and I get it. I'm here many days. Okay. So this is not judgment. I get it. But answer number one, I'm looking for inspiration / motivation. And answer number two, I'm looking for accountability. And, accountability, we're both kind of doing this head dance. Like, I get it. I think that there are people who, and I might be one of them, who work well if the energy around them is supportive of that.
Yes.
Right. So if you're with other people virtually or in person and the focus is right, or think about the writing or whatever, the inspiration, the motivation, that's like writer's block. When I catch myself now going, I'm waiting to be inspired. I'm never going to be inspired. It's never going to happen. It's just the reason I'm using today to let myself off the hook for why I'm not doing the thing.
Absolutely. I just wrote a post on this actually on my personal profile, probably just earlier this week, a couple of days ago, because I have a favorite coffee shop that I always ride at, because it's not just the coffee shop. Like, there's lands that you can actually walk on. There's benches. It's gorgeous. The thing about being at this coffee shop that I've noticed is that when I go there every day, even if days that it's been long, I feel exhausted, I didn't sleep well the night before, I kind of go in thinking, oh, I'm not going to be very productive today. No matter what, I get there. And if I just open myself up to what's around me, and I said, like, every time that door opens and someone new comes in or someone leaves, when you're open to that, the dynamic changes, the atmosphere changes. When you start tuning into other people's conversations, every single interaction, every single word, every single conversation can be fuel for your writing if you open your eyes, open your ears, open your heart to what's around you. So put yourself in those environments that you do find yourself being open, and you will find inspiration if you're open to that inspiration.
I completely agree. Do people get caught up in, this is harder than I thought it was going to be? And
it's honestly, I feel like for anything that we truly want in life, it feels harder than what we think it should be if we want it badly enough. And we're also, no matter what, even at the gym, it's a level of vulnerability that you're opening yourself up to be able to achieve a goal. There are so many of us that are actually terrified of the goals that we want to be able to set. Like, we are terrified of it once we start breaking it down. And there's so much related to fear in general. I mean, fear just blocks us over and over again. And I think that's the beauty of being able to battle it with writing. Like, the times when I do have clients who are like that, I'm like, you know what? Forget your book or your story, whatever you're working on. I want you to just take time to journal on what are you thinking is the worst case scenario in this? Correct. What are your fears that you're actually experiencing in this? Take time to fully write those out, because when we put that on paper, we realize it's not as bad as what we're scared of, but yet it's stopping us over and over again. And the coolest thing, I'm sure you've seen this with your clients, like almost every client will come in saying, I've thought for years that I've wanted to write a book, and then they're in this program and they write the book in like 3 months. And I'm like, this is the thing. You have dreamt about it. You have wanted it for years. It took you 3 months to write it. So remember that with any dream that you take on, you can spend all this time thinking you want to do it. When you fully commit yourself to it, and you find, my big thing is having that why that is actually more important than anything else. Like we were talking about earlier, is it more important than 5 hours of this Netflix show, to pour 5 hours into your writing?
Right.
When it becomes the most important thing to you for that period of your life, you can make it happen. And it's such a short time.
That's what I say. And that's exactly what I say when I say to people, because one of the most common questions is, well, how much time? There's a big misconception that writing a book requires that you quit your job, move to a cabin in the middle of Montana, go off grid, or at least devote 4 hours a day. No, I will say 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me 30 minutes, 6 days a week? I'll even give you the 7th day off, right? 6 days a week. Can you give me 30 minutes? If the answer is no, and they're interested in doing so, I can almost guarantee you, if you go through your schedule, the same way a nutritionist has you go through what you eat in a day to kind of find where you're not being completely honest with yourself about what you're eating, you can find that half an hour where you're scrolling social media, right? Or you're watching the bear or whatever. But those 30 minutes, it adds up.
Yeah.
And you write your way through it. And whether you're writing your way through your fear or you're writing your way through your thoughts, and then sometimes you get to a thought and you think, I'm not really sure what I think about this thought. And then you have to take a second and work through that. And then you're, air quote, better for it because you understand that concept better. You understand yourself better. You'll understand your readers better, whatever the case may be. I mean, one of my biggest goals is, and maybe this is, I don't know, wrong, but is to have people start to look at book writing the same way we look at starting a restaurant. Nobody starts a restaurant and thinks in 6 months, I'm going to have a Michelin star. I mean, bringing it back to the bear. Okay. See how I didn't even mean to do that, but I brought us full circle. I mean, I can never do that. And we're going to be millionaires. And nobody thinks that when they open a restaurant. They know this is going to be 5 years. We have a 95% failure possibility. It's going to be 3 to 5 years of total and complete torture. But we're so passionate about figuring it out that we're willing.
Yeah. 1,000%. That's been a big part of my teachings lately, is that you have to be able to approach this like a business. It's not a hobby. It's truly a business if you really want this outcome that you are hoping for at the end. And I think people are scared of it, to think of it like that too. But one of my clients said it best, because it was right before his launch date of his book. And I was like, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? And he was like, it feels more like a ribbon cutting than a finish line. And I'm like, it should. That's exactly it. Because it's the ribbon cutting, the celebration of this path moving forward now that your book's out, your business of sense. And that was such a beautiful way of putting that.
I love that, because I often say that your launch day is many times the most anticlimactic day. I mean, we expect like fireworks and Colleen Hoover wrapped buses in front of our house and a camel on the front porch and whatever. And it happens and you're kind of like, but it's just the beginning. I love that analogy of the ribbon cutting, and you get to decide how long and at what pace. The one thing I truly do love about self and hybrid publishing is that it's completely on you. No one's pressuring you. Like, we invested this money, let's get these books going. It's, you get to decide for how long you want to keep pushing it.
And that is the beauty. There's no finish line. There's not people waiting on it with like, oh, you better have one good, successful week so that you reach the, all the bestseller lists. I mean, how many even traditional authors do you hear of, like 3 years after their book's been released, suddenly they're a bestseller? Like there's no timeline that you have to work with your book. It's truly out there forever. And if you didn't have a strong first month of sales, don't give up on it.
Okay.
Just keep talking about it. Like, you have to feel so passionate about your book, about whatever's in it, the stories, the message, whatever it might be, that that you will never tire of talking about it. Now, I feel like people will get tired of talking about their book because they are thinking of it as a product, but it's more than that. And you have to be able to look at it from that lens.
Yeah, it very much used to be that you had a very small window in the traditional world to make a mark. Now that backlists, and this is more true with fiction, certainly than non, but now with backlists being such a big deal, if you're a fiction writer and someone finds your book from 7 years ago and it goes crazy on TikTok, well, now everyone's going to buy everything you've ever written.
Yep, exactly.
Right. I mean, I got an email this morning from Ryan Holiday. And well, I mean, it wasn't directly to me, but sometimes I like to think that they were. But anyway,
they do have your name in it. So
it does have my name. It does say hi, Elizabeth. So I mean, that, it stands to reason that he would personally email his huge list of however many millions are on there. But he's one of his books, and I can't remember which one it was, took 6 years to hit the New York Times bestseller, but it did hit it. Yeah. But it took 6 years.
It's all about the time. I mean, it's truly the timing. And I talk about that, like with my first book, you're talking about 20 years to write your novel. My first book was brewing there for about 15 years. It took me 10 years from the time I first wrote the first word to the end, not because I was working on it the whole time. But it's one of those biggest learning lessons I have in my life with writing, because a lot of times we get these ideas and we don't realize that there is a reason why that idea came to us in the time that it did.
Yeah.
I had this book, for this dystopian book, ready to go. So The Giver was my favorite book growing up. So it's very influenced by The Giver. Anytime I see a review from that, I'm like, yes, that actually is very, very influenced by The Giver. And it's not bad. But what I don't like is that it also gets compared to The Hunger Games and Divergent and all of that. And the part that pains me is that I had this book ready to go 5 years before those were ever out.
Oh, I was going to say, why do you not like it? Now I understand.
And I find it, and it was such an eye-opening experience for me, because I've seen this happen with other authors. There's an energy, right? Something that is taking place with that book idea and why it's coming to you. And you don't know, you can't see the whole thing. So for you, you're just kind of like, oh, there's this book idea, and I'll work on it every now and then. A lot of times there's a reason, because it's waiting for this right period for this to hit. And if I had stayed true to that and followed through with it and released it, it would have been right there, right in all of that time that, the dystopian books were a big deal. And that was so eye-opening for me, painful, but eye-opening.
Yeah.
To see.
Well, and if you're kind of a woo-woo person, and I most definitely am, but there's this idea that's been posited that a book or an idea has an energy in and of itself, that it's its own entity, it's its own living thing. And if it presents itself to you, it's because it thinks you can bring it to life. If you don't, its desire to be brought to life doesn't die. So it will find someone else who can bring it to life.
I have something very similar that I call my golden butterfly theory. That's very similar to that. But that's why I get so excited when I have people come to me, even clients or no clients, just to be able to talk to other people in general who are, one book, like they'll tell me their book idea. And it's so interesting because they're in their head, in their heart with this idea, right? Like they think it's for them. And it's so fun listening to it, because I'm like, you don't even realize at this point who this book idea is actually for. Like, it's not just you. And we think that as authors, but there are people it's actually meant for outside of you. And it's so exciting being able to see that, and like see it generating, because the impact it's going to have if they follow through. If they follow
through. And that's one of the hardest parts, I think, as a book coach, is that you can only drag the horse so hard to the water, right? And sometimes I think I am that for people who, like, I'm the horse, and people are like, Liz, where's the book? Are you writing? And I'm just trying to figure this plot line out, whatever it is, you can only drag it. I require their participation.
That's a good way to word it.
I write the book for you. It's not my idea. It's not my life experience. If it's dystopian, you don't want me to write it for you. I have or AI or anything in that realm. You do not want me to even step foot into that. I don't even know. So I'm going to link everything for you below. Yes, we do very much similar things, but I feel, and I believe in my heart, that people find, like, they know in their gut who their person is, right? And if someone messaged me after this and said, I listened to your podcast and I heard Lauren and I checked her out and I signed up for her program, I would do a happy dance.
I see.
There's no part of me that would be like, well, damn it. Why didn't you choose me? I just think you're great.
Same with you.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, this is your friendly reminder to follow or subscribe. leave a quick review, and share it with someone you know has a great story or message, but isn't sure what to do next. Also, remember to check out publishaprofitablebook.com for book writing resources and tips, and to see all the ways we can work together to get your book out into the world. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk with you again soon.